She was mopping the floor near the reception desk when the man walked through the glass doors of the hotel lobby. It was just past 9 in the evening, and Chidinma did not look up. She never looked up when guests arrived. She kept her head low, moved the mop in steady circles, and stayed invisible. That was how she survived. But something made her pause, a voice at the front desk, a deep, calm voice asking for a room. Her hand stopped moving. Her grip tightened around the mop handle. She knew that voice. She had heard it 1,000 times in her dreams over the past 6 years. Slowly, very slowly, she lifted her head, and there he was, Obinna, standing at the reception counter in a dark suit, a leather bag over one shoulder, signing a form like he had just stepped out of another world, because he had. But we will come back to that moment. First, let us go back to where it all began. 6 years earlier, in the city of Enugu, Chidinma and Obinna were 2 young people trying to build something out of nothing. They had met during their national service year. Chidinma was posted to a small clinic in the eastern part of the city. Obinna was assigned to a government office not far from there. One afternoon, he came to the clinic for a routine checkup. Chidinma was at the front desk that day. She handed him a form. Their fingers touched briefly, and Obinna looked at her. She looked back. Neither of them said anything special, but something shifted. Over the following weeks, Obinna kept coming back. At first, it was for small things. A headache, a minor cut. Then one day he admitted the truth. He told her he had been coming to the clinic just to see her. Chidinma laughed. She told him she already knew. From that day they started spending time together. They would sit on the bench outside the clinic after her shift, talking about everything. Chidinma told him about her mother, Mama Izioma, who had raised her alone after her father passed when she was 11. She told him about her dream of going back to school to study pharmacy. Obinna told her about his own family. His father was a retired school teacher. His mother sold provisions at a small shop in their village. He told her his dream was to study engineering abroad, not just for himself, but because he believed he could build something that would change things for his family. After the service year ended, they both returned to different parts of the country. Obinna went back to Lagos, where he had been living before service. Chidinma returned to Enugu to be with her mother. But the distance did not weaken them. They called each other every evening, sometimes twice a day. Sometimes they talked for hours. They were building a future together, even from far away. Obinna eventually found a job at a small construction company in Lagos. The pay was not much, but it kept him going. Chidinma got a job as a pharmacy assistant at a private hospital in Enugu. She earned even less than Obinna, but she saved carefully. Every month she put something aside, no matter how small. Then one day, Obinna called her. His voice sounded different. There was an excitement he was trying to hold back, but Chidinma could hear it clearly. She asked him what happened. He told her. A colleague at work had shown him an advertisement for a fully funded engineering program in Canada. The program covered tuition, but not travel, visa processing, or living expenses for the first 3 months. Obinna had applied without telling her. He said he did not want to raise her hopes in case nothing came of it. But something did come of it. He had been accepted. Chidinma screamed so loudly that Mama Izioma came running from the kitchen, thinking something was wrong. When Chidinma explained, her mother smiled and said quietly, "God is faithful," but the joy did not last long. That same night, after the excitement settled, Obinna told Chidinma the hard part. He needed money. The scholarship would not begin until he arrived in Canada and registered. He needed to cover his flight, visa fees, medical tests, and at least 3 months of living costs. His family could not help. His father's pension barely covered food, and his mother's shop earned just enough to keep the lights on. Obinna said he was thinking of turning it down. He said maybe it was not meant to be. Maybe the timing was wrong. Chidinma stayed quiet for a while. Then she told him something he never expected. She told him she had been saving money since the end of their service year. She had not touched it once. She said it was not a lot, but it might be enough to cover most of what he needed. Obinna went silent. Then he said, "Chidinma, I cannot take your savings." She replied, "You are not taking anything. I am giving it, because I believe in you." He tried to argue, but she would not let him. She told him that when he succeeded, they would both succeed. She said she did not want him to look back years from now and regret that he let fear stop him when the door was right there. Obinna could not sleep that night. He lay on his mattress in his small room in Lagos and stared at the ceiling. He made a decision. He would go, but he made a silent promise that he would come back for her. A few weeks later, Chidinma sent him the money. It was everything she had. She transferred it without hesitation. Obinna used it to process his visa, buy his ticket, and prepare for the journey. 2 weeks before his departure, he traveled to Enugu to see her. He arrived at Mama Izioma's house in the evening. Chidinma was sitting on the front steps, waiting. When she saw him, she stood up. He walked toward her and pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a simple ring. It was not expensive. He told her that. But he said it was a promise that he would come back, a promise that everything he was going to build over there was for both of them. Chidinma looked at the ring. Then she looked at him. She did not cry. She simply held out her hand. He slipped the ring onto her finger and held her hand tightly. Neither of them spoke for a long time. They just stood there together under the evening sky, while Mama Izioma watched from the window, wiping her eyes with the edge of her wrapper. The day Obinna left was difficult. They went to the airport in Lagos together. Chidinma held his arm the entire way. At the departure gate, she finally let go. Obinna looked at her one more time and said, "Wait for me." She nodded. For the first Titans, everything was fine. They spoke every day. Obinna told her about the cold in Calgary, about the lectures, about the strange food. Chidinma told him about work, about Mama Izioma's new church group, about the neighbor's loud generator that kept her awake at night. Their conversations felt normal, easy, like he had not gone far at all. Then one afternoon, Chidinma called him. The phone rang once and cut off. She tried again. It rang twice and went to voicemail. She sent a text, no reply. She called again the next morning. Nothing. The number was no longer reachable. She waited a day, then 2 days, then a week, then a month. She called every single day for 3 months. The number never connected again. She sent messages. She sent emails to the only email address she had for him. Nothing came back. It was as though Obinna had been erased from the earth. At first, Chidinma told herself he was busy. Then she told herself maybe his phone was stolen. Then she told herself maybe something had happened to him. She began to panic. She could not eat. She could not sleep properly. Mama Izioma noticed and held her daughter's hand one evening. "If he is alive," Mama Izioma said gently, "he will find his way back to you." But weeks became months, and months became years, and Obinna did not come back. What Chidinma did not know was this. Obinna had been on his way to a lecture one morning when his bag was stolen on the train. Inside the bag was his phone, his wallet, and a small notebook where he kept important numbers. In that moment, he lost everything that connected him to his life back home. He went to the police. He filed a report. Nothing was recovered. He tried to remember Chidinma's number. He had always relied on his phone to store it. He tried different combinations, but none of them worked. He did not have her email memorized. He did not know Mama Izioma's full name or exact address, only the general area. He tried reaching out through social media, but Chidinma did not have any accounts at the time. He was stranded in a foreign country with no way to reach the one person who mattered most. For a while, he could barely focus. His grades dropped. He lost weight. His housemates noticed and asked what was wrong, but he could not explain. How do you explain to strangers that the woman who gave you everything is waiting for you back home, and you cannot even send her a single word? Eventually, he forced himself to keep going. Not because the pain had stopped, but because he knew that if he failed, Chidinma's sacrifice would have been for nothing. He told himself he would finish the program, make something of himself, and go home to find her. That became the only thought that kept him moving forward. He completed his master's degree in engineering. He graduated with honors. Through a professor's connection, he joined a construction technology firm in Toronto. He worked long hours. He saved aggressively. And in the evenings, he and 2 classmates from university started working on a structural modeling software. It began as a side project. Late nights in a cramped apartment, arguing about code and design. But the software worked. It solved a problem that large construction companies were struggling with. Within a year, companies started reaching out. Within 2 years, the software was licensed across 3 provinces. Then came the offer. A major tech firm offered to acquire their company. The amount was more money than Obinna had ever imagined. He and his partners accepted. Obinna became a very wealthy man, but money did not bring him peace. Because every night when the meetings were over and the calls had ended and the apartment was quiet, one face stayed in his mind. Chidinma. He began making plans to return to Nigeria. He contacted old friends. He asked anyone who might know anything. No one had information about her. The clinic where she once worked had closed. The hospital where she had been a pharmacy assistant had changed management. No records, no trace. Still, Obinna packed his things and flew home. He told himself he would search every street in Enugu if he had to. Now let us return to that night in the hotel lobby. Obinna had arrived in Abuja first. He planned to spend one night there before catching an early morning flight to Enugu. His original hotel booking had been cancelled due to a system error. The front desk apologized and said there were no rooms available. So he took a taxi to another hotel nearby, a clean, mid-range place with a quiet lobby. He checked in, collected his key card, and walked toward the elevator. As he passed the corridor leading to the restaurant, he glanced briefly at the woman mopping the floor near the reception area. Something about her caught his attention, but the light was dim, and she was turned away. He kept walking. The next morning, Obinna came down early. He wanted coffee before his flight. The hotel restaurant was nearly empty. He sat at a corner table. A waitress came to take his order. She had her head slightly down, reading her small notepad. When she looked up, their eyes met. Obinna's cup slipped from his hand and hit the table with a sharp sound. Chidinma. She stood there, frozen. The notepad dropped from her fingers. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. The entire restaurant felt like it had gone silent. Then Chidinma's lips trembled. Her eyes filled. Her knees buckled, and before she could fall, Obinna was already out of his seat. He caught her in his arms. Chidinma. He said her name like a prayer. Her body went limp. Her eyes closed. Hotel staff rushed over. Someone brought water. Someone called for a manager. Obinna held her and kept saying her name, but she did not respond. He lifted her and asked the closest staff member where the nearest hospital was. They told him. He carried her outside, got into a taxi, and held her the entire way. At the hospital, doctors took her in immediately. Obinna waited outside the examination room. He could not sit. He paced the corridor. He leaned against walls. He pressed his hands over his face and breathed slowly. When the doctor finally came out, his expression was careful. He explained that Chidinma had fainted from shock, combined with physical exhaustion. But during the examination, they found something else. She had a medical condition that had gone untreated for a long time. She needed surgery, and it could not wait. Obinna looked at the doctor and said only one thing. "Do whatever you need to do. I will pay for everything." The doctor paused, then nodded. "We will begin preparations today." While the medical team worked, Obinna sat in the hospital chapel. He did not consider himself a religious man. But that afternoon, he closed his eyes and asked God for one thing. "Please do not take her from me now, not after all these years." The surgery took several hours. When the doctor came out and told him it was successful, Obinna finally sat down. His hands were shaking. For the next 5 days, Chidinma remained in the hospital recovering. Obinna did not leave the city. He cancelled every plan. He stayed in the same hotel and went to the hospital every single morning, sitting beside her bed for hours. On the 3rd day, Chidinma woke up while he was sitting there. She turned her head slowly and saw him. Her eyes studied him carefully, as though she was not sure he was real. "Obinna?" Her voice was barely a whisper. He leaned closer. "It is me." She reached out and touched his face with trembling fingers. "You are really here." "I am here, and I am not leaving again." Chidinma's eyes filled with tears. She tried to speak but could not. Obinna held her hand and stayed quiet. Some things did not need words. Over the next 2 days they talked, slowly at first. Chidinma was still weak, so Obinna did most of the listening at first and only asked gentle questions. But eventually, she told him everything. After losing contact with him, she had waited for over a year, hoping he would call or come back. When he did not, she began to wonder if he had forgotten her. Then her mother, Mama Izioma, fell ill. The medical bills were high. Chidinma used the last of her savings to pay for treatment. Mama Isioma recovered, but Chidinma was left with nothing. Then the hospital where she worked closed one of its departments. She was let go. She searched for another position, but the job market was brutal. Months passed. She moved to a cheaper apartment, then to an even cheaper one. Eventually, she moved to Abuja because a distant relative told her there might be work there. The relative helped her get the waitressing and cleaning job at the hotel. It was not much, but it kept her alive. Then came the chest pains. She ignored them at first, but they got worse. A clinic visit revealed the condition. Surgery was the only option, but the cost was far beyond anything she could earn at the hotel, so she simply kept working, day after day, hoping something would change. "I stopped waiting for you," she said quietly. "Not because I stopped loving you, but because I thought you had moved on." Obinna closed eyes. The pain in his chest felt physical. He told her everything. The stolen bag, the lost phone, the numbers he could not remember, the failed searches, the sleepless nights, the software company, the money, the decision to come home. "I never forgot you," he said. "Not for a single day." Chidinma looked at him for a long time. Then she said, "Maybe this is how it was supposed to happen. Maybe we had to go through all of it to end up here." Obinna said nothing. He just held her hand tighter. On the 6th day, the doctor cleared Chidinma for discharge. Obinna pulled up to the hospital entrance in a black SUV he had purchased 2 days earlier. Chidinma stepped outside and stopped when she saw the car. She looked at him. He opened the passenger door without a word. During the drive, Chidinma stayed quiet, looking out the window. The streets of Abuja moved past them. Eventually, she asked, "Where are we going?" "I bought a place," Obinna said casually. "While you were recovering." Chidinma did not respond, but when the car turned into a gated estate with large, beautiful houses and manicured lawns, her eyes widened. She looked at him again. He kept his eyes on the road. The car stopped in front of a large white house, with a wide compound and a garden. Obinna helped her out gently and led her inside. The house was fully furnished. Modern kitchen, spacious living room, everything in place. Chidinma walked through the rooms in silence. She ran her fingers along the kitchen counter. She looked at the high ceilings, the large windows, the soft lighting. Then she stopped in the middle of the living room and turned to face him. "How?" she asked, simply. Obinna sat her down and told her about the software company. He told her about the acquisition. He told her how the money came. He told her all of it. Chidinma listened without interrupting. When he finished, she looked at her hands. Then she said, "I gave you that money 6 years ago because I believed in your dream. I never imagined it would become all of this." Obinna looked at her. "None of this exists without you. You know that." She shook her head. "You did the work, and you made it possible." Silence filled the room. Then Obinna stood up. "There is something else," he said. He walked over to a drawer near the bookshelf and came back with a brown envelope. He placed it on the table in front of her. "What is this?" she asked. "Open it." Inside the envelope was a printed certificate of business registration. The name on it was a wellness and pharmacy company, and below the company name was Chidinma's full legal name as the founder and managing director. She stared at the document. Her hands trembled. Obinna spoke gently. "You once told me your dream was to study pharmacy and build something of your own. I registered this company in your name. When you are ready, we will set everything up together. It is yours." Chidinma could not speak. She pressed the document against her chest and looked at him through tears. In the weeks that followed, Chidinma recovered fully. Obinna made sure she had everything she needed. New clothes, proper meals, rest. He flew Mama Isioma to Abuja so she could be with her daughter. When the old woman walked into the house and saw Chidinma standing there, healthy and smiling, she grabbed her daughter and held her so tightly that neither of them could breathe. Mama Isioma looked at Obinna and said, "I always knew you were a good man." Obinna simply bowed his head and said, "Mama, she is the reason I am anything at all." One evening, weeks later, Obinna and Chidinma sat in the living room. The television was on, but neither of them was watching it. They were talking about the future, business plans, timelines, ideas. Chidinma was animated in a way Obinna had not seen in years. Her eyes were bright, her voice was strong. She was becoming herself again. Then, in the middle of a sentence, Obinna interrupted her. "Wait," he said suddenly. He pointed toward the hallway. Did you hear that? Chidinma turned quickly. Hear what? That sound. From the hallway. She stood up slightly, alarmed. What sound? I did not hear anything. When she turned back, Obinna was on one knee. In his hand was a ring. Not the simple one from 6 years ago. This one caught the light from every angle. Chidinma's hand flew to her mouth. Obinna looked up at her. I asked you once before, a long time ago, under a different sky, with a different ring, when we had nothing but each other. You said, yes. He paused. Now I am asking again. Not because the first time did not count, but because you deserve to hear it again, on this side of everything we have been through. Chidinma's tears fell freely. She did not wipe them. Chidinma, will you marry me? She looked at him, at the ring, at the life that had unfolded around them in ways neither of them could have predicted. And she said the same word she had said 6 years before. Yes. He slid the ring onto her finger and stood. She stepped into his arms and held on like she would never let go again. He held her back just as tightly. I love you, she whispered. I love you, he said. After a moment, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out 2 small booklets. Chidinma looked down and saw they were passports. Both had fresh Canadian visa stamps inside. What is this? She asked. Obinna smiled. I want to take you to the country that changed my life. I want you to see where I lived, where I studied, where I built everything that brought me back to you. Chidinma held the passport and stared at it. Then she laughed. It was the first real, full laugh Obinna had heard from her since the day he found her again. The sound filled the room. A month later, they flew to Canada together. For 2 weeks, they explored Toronto, drove through the countryside, and visited the campus in Calgary, where Obinna had once been a struggling student eating instant noodles in a tiny apartment. Chidinma stood in front of the old building and said, This is where it all started. Obinna looked at her and replied, No. It started on a bench outside a clinic in Enugu. When they returned to Nigeria, their wedding took place on a Saturday afternoon. It was not the biggest ceremony anyone had ever seen, but it was filled with people who genuinely loved them. Mama Izioma sat in the front row in a brand new outfit, her face wet with tears she did not even try to hide. Friends and family danced and ate and celebrated until the evening turned to night. And as Obinna and Chidinma stood together at the end of that long, beautiful day, they knew something that most people only hear about in stories. That love, real love, the kind that gives without counting, the kind that waits without knowing, the kind that survives silence, distance, and years of not knowing whether the other person is even alive. That kind of love does not die. It simply waits for the right moment to come home. Sometimes life pulls people apart in ways that feel permanent, but what is meant for you will find its way back. Not because the universe owes you anything, but because some bonds are built from something stronger than circumstance. They are built from sacrifice, from trust, and from a promise made under an evening sky that neither time nor distance could ever break.